As the director of marketing for Lehman's and daughter of company founder Jay Lehman, Glenda Lehman Urban is responsible for the customer's view of the brand. Lehman's exists to help people take the next step on their journey to a simpler life. Through a large retail store in Kidron, Ohio, a print catalog and website, Lehmans.com, the company provides practical products for the home and garden. Lehmans has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, Smithsonian Magazine, and the Washington Post, and that was just in 2020. The store was voted the best destination in Amish country 6 years in a row by readers of Ohio Magazine. A graduate of Taylor University, Glenda has a master's degree from Indiana University. She started her career as a journalist before moving to a university, then a Fortune 200 company, and then she joined Lehman's in 1996. Glenda is a board member of the Wayne County Community Foundation, the Wayne County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and she recently finished multi-year terms on the boards of the Village Network and Central American Medical Outreach. She and her husband, Scott, have 2 children in their early 20s. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Glenda Lehman Urban.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you all for being here today. Harry Truman once said, "There is nothing new in this world except the history that you do not know." I am going to tell you some history about Lehman's. The story actually started 150 years ago when some Swiss Anabaptists, Mennonites as we know them today, moved from Switzerland to Kidron, escaping religious persecution. We think that they chose Kidron because it reminded them of their native Switzerland, and farmland was pretty inexpensive. The story that I've heard is that 2 of those families, one had 9 daughters and the other had 11 sons. And that was the start of Kidron. One of the great-grandsons of those settler families built a little store at the corner of Kidron and Emerson Roads. His name was A.B. Summers. The year was 1915, and what he did was not unusual. He was selling non-electric appliances to local people, many in rural areas who did not have electricity in the early 1900s. When he decided to retire in 1955, Mr. Summers wanted to sell the business. And my father, who had just returned from voluntary service overseas after World War II, was looking for a job. So he thought, I should buy that little hardware store and make that my business. I'm going to call it Lehman's Hardware and Appliances, Inc. My dad didn't have any money, so he borrowed money from his father, my grandfather, Ezra, and Dad was the only employee. Many people forget that for many years he worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and it was just him. He wasn't making quite enough money to pay his father back, which of course was unacceptable to him, so he took a job as a school bus driver in the morning, in the afternoon. So he needed somebody to watch the store, so he hired his father, his banker, as his first employee. So Ezra and Jay, and eventually Jay's brother David, and his sister Pearl, and a family friend worked. So for the first 20 years, it was just the 5 of them. One of the things that I truly believe made Lehman's what it is today is Dad's goal to preserve the past for future generations. Again, in 1955, when he bought the store, every small town had a little hardware store selling to the local people, many of whom didn't have electricity. But Dad greatly admired the Amish way of life and wanted to ensure that they had the products they needed to maintain that way of life. After all, if there are no butter churns, nobody knows how to churn butter. So that was his goal, is to serve the local Amish. Many of them have since moved south of us into Holmes County, but at one point, Kidron, Wayne County had lots of Amish living right there in town. Again, this was not unusual in 1955. What made Dad so unusual is that he continued to sell those non-electric, old-fashioned, but brand new products through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even through today. So in the early 1970s, there were 3 things that dramatically changed the trajectory of the business. Ironically, each one of them 20 years apart. The first was in the early 70s, the energy crisis, the oil embargo. Some of you may remember that. People were concerned about how they were going to heat their homes and access to fossil fuels. Dad, because he wanted to serve his Amish customers, had bought a 3-year supply of black wood heating and cooking stoves. And the reason he had to bring a 3-year supply is the vendors said, we're not going to make those anymore. Nobody wants them. They're old fashioned. People want furnaces and air conditioning, but it was so important to Dad to serve his Amish customers. He ordered a 3-year supply. Those of you in business know that's some pretty short inventory turns, or pretty long tail inventory turns. Well, his 3-year supply was gone in 6 months. So like any good businessman, he dumped the profits back into the business so he could add on and hire more people and sell more stoves. In late 1970s, Dad decided to reach people from out of the area because we had been getting calls from Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Keep in mind, his business zone was Downton, Orville, Apple Creek, Kidron. So to get a call from somebody in Cleveland that wanted a wood cook stove was unusual. He thought, how can we reach these people? He said, I know, I'm gonna make a catalog. My father, who didn't even graduate from high school and knew nothing about the mail order business, decided to put together a catalog. I actually found one of the very first catalogs, and written in pencil on the front, it said, shall we mimeograph? That means copy. Shall we mimeograph 1,000, or is that too many? Through our heyday, we were sending out millions of catalogs. This was the 70s, the 80s, 90s, when mail order was huge. And the big deal for Dad was that he could now reach people with photos and prices and pictures without them having to come to the store, because people were constantly calling saying, what does it look like? What color is it? How much is it? Where do you ship it? And that started the whole mail order business. I mentioned that every 20 years, something dramatic happened, and certainly the business grew in the 80s and the 90s. The biggest thing ever to affect the business didn't happen in 1999. Remember what that was? Y2K. I don't know what it did for you all, but it rocked our world. It started, well, keep in mind, we always hear about the world ending. We do have preppers, survivalists, customers, doomsday preppers, that kind of thing. And so we're constantly hearing these kind of fatalic predictions of what's going to happen. So it was August of 98. We heard 1999, when the computer rolled over to 2000, it was going to shut the grid down. That means no banks, no grocery stores, no gas stations, no electricity. And, you know, people were thinking, oh, think of where you live. It's January and there's no electricity in the world. Do you have a way to cook your food, to heat your home? Do you have a source for light? And so people who, I fondly call them the clueless, because they had no idea what they were doing, would come to us and ask for advice about purchasing product. Keep in mind, when you're dealing with the Amish, it's multi-generational information that they've been taught from generation to generation. You know, what a 10-year-old boy knew 100 years ago, he probably knew how to butcher a hog, and he probably knew how to milk a goat and how to feed the horses. That knowledge was becoming lost, which is why we fondly call them the clueless. So we did a lot of educating, which we love to do. That's a big part of what we do. However, that meant every phone call was an hour instead of 10 minutes. When an Amish person walks into the store, they know what they want. Well, my well's broken, I need this, and I've got to, you know, do this and this. But when you have someone who is living a completely urban, modern life, and they're worried about no electricity, what do they need for heat, food, light, and water? Typically, when we get an order before noon, like today, it would go out the door before noon tomorrow. That's a typical business cycle. During Y2K, we were so slammed, we were 5 weeks behind opening the mail. We had a room the size of a bedroom full of unopened letters. And the reason we were getting so much mail is that our phone lines were tied up, constantly busy. And somebody said, why don't you add more phones? We had 32 lines coming into the business. And the reason we didn't add more is we couldn't get the product. Many of our products are Amish made, one at a time. They don't work on Sundays. They primarily handle hire family, and they're not very capitalistic. So you can't say, I'll pay you triple to make more. So we have a well pump. It is, I mean, a well bucket. It's a long skinny cylinder. And if you don't have electricity, you can see the water in your well, but you can't get it out. So you pull your pump out and you drop this bucket in there. We typically sell maybe one a week. We were getting orders for 50 a week, and they're made by a single Amishman in Wayne County. So we didn't feel we were providing the best customer service, but it did make us realize that knowledge gap that Dad was worried about. He wanted to preserve the past for future generations. And he was realizing that generational knowledge of how to work on a farm, how to fix things, repair things, how to can, how to clean out a wood cook stove, those things that were a part of everyone's working knowledge were dissipating. And so he felt even more strongly that we had a goal to educate as well as to sell. Now, during Y2K too, we got a ton of media attention, which actually made it kind of worse because we were so backlogged. There were TV crews in the store from Japan, from Germany. Tom Brokaw mentioned us, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and that just fueled the fire of more people becoming desperate. So what we tell people is you want to be prepared, not scared. Because if you're prepared, you don't have to feel the fear of what's going to happen, the fear of the unknown. So during this, right before Y2K started, my brother Galen, who led the company for a number of years, he recently retired, had the idea, he'd heard about something that you could, at very little cost, send messages free through the air all over the world, the internet. He had the idea that we could use high tech to sell low tech. Printing and producing a catalog and mailing it is expensive. It's very expensive. The 3 Ps we call it, printing, paper, and postage. And so he wanted to be able for people to find us, that we didn't just have to mail them a catalog. Our website crashed repeatedly during the whole Y2K year and a half. We were one of the first companies in the United States to have an e-commerce website. Selling products. And you just think of the irony of selling to people who don't have electricity, but using the internet. And so then Y2K came and went and nothing happened, right? We were, at least I was up midnight watching as the clock covered across the world, nothing happened. And the phone stopped ringing. The calls stopped coming in, business just dried up. And we had really staffed up for Y2K. And so we had to, make a lot of difficult changes. And one of the things we thought initially was maybe we've saturated the market. How many people want to live without electricity or have a backup plan in case there's no electricity? Then we thought, well, that can't be true. There's billions of people in the world. Surely there's some people out there that still want that knowledge. So we switched from being the place where you could come and get what you wanted. Here's a bucket, choose what you want, take it, to how can we help you solve a problem? That's basically what marketing is, right? The power of persuasion. What is your issue? Do you have high credit card bills? Are you not eating healthy? Are your kids on screen time too much? And we really changed our marketing to, as Marty mentioned, help you take the next step on your journey to a simpler life. That life is understandable, it's comforting, it's sustainable, it's prepared. Think of baking a pie with your family. Well, you could just go to the grocery and buy a pie. Why would you do that? Because it's satisfying, it's understandable, it gives you a feeling. And so we realized we weren't just selling a product, we were selling the why. So the what is the product, and then the how do you use it? We have lots of videos on how to make cider and how to churn butter and all of that. But the why would you choose to live that lifestyle if you didn't have to? And we found a common thread of people who wanted to be more self-reliant, more self-sufficient. So it's not just living off grid, it's having a backup plan, it's growing your own food and preserving it. So we changed our marketing to be much more inclusive as opposed to exclusive. If you're only selling to people that live off the grid that know what they're doing, that's very exclusive. But if you're being inclusive and saying, you can be a homesteader if you make it at home instead. If you make soap, if you bake bread, you don't have to have 10 acres with cows and chickens. And we actually taught people out of some of that because they're going to fail. The smaller the animal, the easier it is to take care of. Start with a chicken or a rabbit, then get a goat, and then get bigger and bigger. I talked to a woman whose goal was to grow a pizza. She was a dentist in Memphis, Tennessee, and she had teenagers, and she just didn't like what was going on around her. So she built a cabin out in the woods, bought a bunch of acreage with no electricity, and she grew the wheat to grind for the flour. She butchered the hogs for the bacon. She milked the goats for the cheese. She grew the herbs and the spices and the tomatoes for the sauce, and she grew a pizza. She said it took her 3 years instead of 30 minutes, but it was well worth the wait. And so this was a professional, highly educated woman that was embracing this kind of lifestyle. So we started realizing, again, that there were more people out there, and the internet, of course, had grown dramatically since then. And so we decided that we would stop printing the catalog because people don't want catalogs anymore. And, it's a lot of work to put one together. There was literally a public outcry from our customers. They wanted the catalog. We said it's cost prohibitive to mail it like we were doing. They said, we'll pay for it. We'll pay for it. So we said, okay, we're going to bring back the catalog. Place an order if you're interested. We had 12,000 back orders on the catalog before we'd even started working on it. So we brought it back. Now we charge $6 for the catalog, which covers our costs. And the catalog is the #1 selling item on the website, even though everything in the catalog is available for sale on the website. So just when you think you have your customers figured out, you don't. And so it's 20 years, you've got 1970s, the energy crisis, you've got Y2K, and what just happened in 2020? COVID. Again, we saw a huge outpouring demand. Okay, in a typical spring, April of 2019, we sold 30 puzzles online, old-fashioned jigsaw puzzles, pretty normal. In April of 2020, remember COVID started in March, we sold 734. puzzles. So you see why there were supply chain issues? Who knew people would be at home doing puzzles? Looking back on it, it makes sense that they wanted to, have something to do other than just watch TV. That and sourdough bread. How many people started making sourdough bread during COVID? We got, again, a huge outpouring of those I fondly call the clueless because they didn't know what they were doing. So we spent a lot of time educating. We didn't know how long it was going to last. It lasted all through 2020, 2021, 2022. It's calmed down a little bit now. And certainly some of those people said, I'm never doing this again. I'm going through the drive-through at McDonald's. I'm watching Netflix. I don't want anything to do with this. But a lot of people, it's stuck, at least in part. It's stuck that making family meals together was enjoyable. It's stuck that planting a garden, doing other things was enjoyable. And so we again added to our customer base and again, the media attention. We were rather charmed by this idea of a tiny hardware store in Amish country selling lots of products. One product that we 10 times increased in sales is the old-fashioned wooden washboard. And we sold them in metropolitan areas. Why do you think that is? Laundromats. They were either closed or they didn't want to go. And so there were people in New York City and Boston and Chicago, presumably in their bathtubs, washing their clothes the old-fashioned way. And we're one of the few companies that still carries a wooden washboard. So we're constantly seeing things like that we think those days are gone. Nobody wants them. But I think now, generationally, it's been so long since everyone knew how to do those things. They're exciting. They're brand new. We do a ton of stuff on food preservation, pickling, fermenting, preserving, freeze drying, canning, water bath or pressure canning, and the interest has been dramatic. We do classes, we do workshops, we work with our vendors to ensure that we have the right product in stock in the right season, and it has really benefited the people that we're trying to serve. I truly believe that Lehman's has a noble cause, and by being online and social media, we have, I think, 110,000 followers on Facebook. Somebody asked my dad one time, if you're all about non-electricity, why do you have social media? And he said, because that's where the people are. And I thought that was a pretty succinct answer to that question. So now we have, as Marty mentioned, the retail store. How many of you have been to the store? And then we have a print catalog that is for sale. And then we have certainly our website, which is layman's.com. And then we have our social media channels. One of the things that we're doing now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are so many YouTube influencers that are homesteading and sharing their journey. So we partner with them. Many of them are already customers. They have a wood cook stove, they have an oil lamp, and they're showing their daily lives. One of our influencers has 7 million followers, and his dog has 2 million followers. Minion the dog. And so that helped us reach their audience and turn them into Lehman's customers, hopefully. Certainly there was already some overlap, because if you're interested in living off grid, it's a niche market, but there aren't many people that do what we do. So I told Dad it's like coming in first in a beauty contest. There are only 3 contestants, but still, if you walk away with the crown, you're still the winner. So today, now we have our mission statement of For a Simpler Life, and we are entertaining people with events at the store, cow cuddling, goat yoga, axe throwing, samples baked on the wood cook stove, and we are doing a lot of educating. We have classes on everything from pie baking to sourdough bread making to everything that you could imagine. And then we also, of course, want to sell product, but we're different in that entertaining and educating actually come before selling to our customers. So that is a brief history of Lehman's. I wanted to open it up for questions, and then we're going to play a game with prize. Yes.
I remember a presentation a couple years ago where you talked about Hollywood and them being a customer.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. There's really I could talk for hours, but people have to get back to work. But we call it the Hollywood to Kidron connection. The next time you see a movie and they're using a wooden washboard, a copper kettle, an old-time wheelbarrow, a pitchfork, chances are it came from us. Because if you are a prop master, a set designer, that's what the union is called, prop masters, and you are tasked with filling a house with products from the 1800s, you don't want antiques. You want brand new products because it's supposed to be 1883. We have them in stock. We know how to use them. We can ship them in multiple quantities. And we've actually gotten the credit, when the credits roll, of historical technology consultant, which means we tell them, no, you crank it this way, not this way. So Pirates of the Caribbean, Back to the Future, Cold Mountain, Dr. Quinn, Lonesome Dove, The Walking Dead. I had heard, we haven't tracked it down yet, but I've heard Yellowstone use some of our products too, because when they call in and place an order, they don't say, typically, I'm working on a movie for this, and often it's far in advance. Interview with the Vampire, all the oil lamps in there were from Lehman's, and so when you can deliver like that, you get on a short list of people that can deliver, and we don't rent, or they buy them. And then they can, I don't know what sometimes they auction them off for fundraisers or give them to the staff and the crew. But I get a kick out of thinking of Nicole Kidman or Johnny Depp using our products, the same ones that the Amish farmers use. That's a good question. Thank you.
Not sure if you know this offhand. What is your number one seller and what's the average gross sale?
The number one seller by unit would be the wood heating and cooking stoves. By dollar, it's going to be the houseware section, which is the rolling pins and the cookie cutters and the apple peelers. You know, a lot of what we have has to do with seasonality. You grow it in the spring. We have a whole series called From Plant to Plate to Pantry. So you grow it in the spring, you eat it in its season, and then you preserve it. So that's a wide assortment of products. We have some striped dishcloths that are one of our number one sellers, and we have ginger snap cookies by unit, again, not by dollar. And then it varies during season too. We have some hot cocoa mixes that sell very well over the holidays. Now, keep in mind, the store traffic is pretty different than the online customer. The store traffic are a lot of tourists, people who have no interest in maybe living off grid or any of that, but it's an interesting place to be. And we hear all the time that people bring friends and relatives. I heard a couple stories today that so-and-so was in town and we brought them down to Lehman's. So it is a tourist destination. The products that sell online, one of the key categories there is, we call it non-traditional lighting, lighting that doesn't take electricity, oil lamps, lanterns. We have a hand cranked flashlight. We have solar products, and so non-electric lighting sells very well online. And the housewares department, you know, if you're growing your own food or going to a farmer's market and you're getting bushels of peaches and tomatoes, you're going to have to chop it, eat it, bake it, cook it, freeze it, put it in a pie, do something with it. And we get calls from people, bless their hearts. One woman said she wanted to make her grandma's salsa recipe, and it called for 100 tomatoes. So she planted 100 tomato plants. Fondly clueless, right? That's a good example. So she called us in a panic. She had thousands of tomatoes, and we told her about the Roma strainer and how you could make salsa and you could make ketchup and you could make tomato sauce and all of this stuff. Now for Christmas, that's all she does is roast tomatoes. She got her own jars and her own labels, and that's what she gives to people because of the pleasure of saying, I made this for you. So yeah, we do hear from people who get themselves in a bind and they call us, and typically we can help.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah, Sue had a question. Oh, did you have one too? Okay.
It's back.
Okay.
So thank you for sharing with us.
Sure.
About a month ago, I had, I made a comment to my aunt, maybe you need to make my own letter, just one time at least. So for my birthday, I got a letter from Lehman's.
Aw.
And $8 a pound, because that's how much the cream costs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for a letter, but it was just the fact that no one shared that with the kids, and they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
My question is, how many different products do you have?
You know, it depends if you count, but like every color, like if we have a blue mug, but we also have a red one and black one. If you count every single SKU, it's about 65,000 in the store. And we're unusual too, because the website has less than the store. Typically, like if you go into Target and you're looking for a Lego set, well, we don't have it in the store, but go online. Best Buy, go online. We're the opposite because of the tourism component. And there are a lot of things in the store that just don't sell that well online because they're more of a commodity. Like we have Lehman's t-shirts and magnets and mugs because customers ask for them. A lot of what we carry is because somebody has asked for it. I mean, I'm sure Dad never thought someone would want a t-shirt with his name on it. And then we had a lot of fun using Dad's image different places. You probably seen some of the billboards and the print ads. And he asked me one time, why are you doing that? And I said two things. One, customers would ask, is there really a J. Lehman? And then I said, it's something customers or competitors can never poach because he belongs to us.
Glenda, what's your future, do you think? It seems like much of what you've done is respond very well to either events or culture changes or whatever, but in your planning, when you have to look ahead, where do you think Lehman's is going?
Yeah, we're looking for a much younger audience. We typically have skewed over 55, but we are seeing a lot of people. I'll give an example of my daughter, who is 24. She is very interested in tactile, hands-on, sewing machine, a record player. She wants to crochet because everything she does is virtual. It's on demand. And there's something I think as humans, we need to dig in the dirt, and we need to knead bread and need bread and things like that. And so I think there is a real opportunity for young people, and that I mean people under 40 who have not done these things, and they are so tied into technology. And if they didn't have their phone or their laptop, and we hear parents talking about battling screen time over and over again, and you can take the phone away and then the kid will be unhappy and there'll be conflict. Or if you can say, why don't we start a monarch garden? Why don't we plant flowers and see what monarchs it attracts and keep track of it and create a little book? So it's replacing that screen time with something that is more relational and more involved and more hands-on. Yeah.
You said that a lot of your products are manufactured by Amish shops and so forth. Do you still interact a lot with the Amish as customers?
That is a very good question too. I would say the amount of customers are probably the same as when Dad opened the store in 1955, but 95% of our customers are not Amish. However, Dad's goal was to help them maintain their way of life. What an Amishman wants to do is put his feet under the table 3 times a day. That means having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with his family in their home, which is what a farmer would do. There's only so much farmland. So now we have a ton of vendors that are Amish, making hickory rockers and baskets and wrought iron poker sets. That's what they want to do, is stay at home and create something. And then that generational knowledge is passed down from generations to generations. We have a hickory rocker that Andy Griffith actually bought from us, Mayberry RFD. But the grandpa was making them and he was getting older, but we were buying so many and selling so many that he taught his son, and now his son has taught his son. So we're on our 3rd generation. And so yes, the Amish connection is very important to us. Dad used to drive around to farms and would say, hey, Eli, do you have this wagon wheel? And he said, well, no, but Jacob up the road, he might have one. And Dad spoke Pennsylvania Dutch. We still have 2 employees that speak Pennsylvania Dutch, which is what the Amish speak. And so that connection is still very important to us. They sometimes, a customer will bring in a product that's no longer made, and we'll research. And if there's no patent on it, we'll take it to an Amish craftsman and reverse engineer it. And then it becomes an exclusive because no one else is making it.
Has there been any change in ownership of the company or the store over the years? Because it's been around for now, how long?
Next year will be 70 years. You guys have us beat, having just celebrated your 100th anniversary, but next year will be 70 years. Yes, in 2021, my father passed away in 2020 at the wonderful old age of 91, and up until his very last years, he was playing tennis. One of my favorite stories is he actually got demoted from the over 80 league to the under 70 because nobody could beat him in the over 80 league. And he passed away, and my brother wanted to retire. There's 5 grandchildren between my siblings, and they were either too young or had chosen a different career path, and it's never been any kind of nepotism, or it was always if you want to work at Lehman's, and they all took different career paths. And so in January of 2021, we merged with HRM Enterprises, which is the parent company for Hartville Hardware and Hartville Marketplace. And so if you walk into Lehman's, you wouldn't see any difference. It's just now that we have support, back-end support for the business, everything from accounting to HR to legal. They're a much bigger team than we were, and they're very different. They rely primarily on retail, and our direct business, our mail order or shipping things out, is about 70% of the business now. So for a long time, we were a store. Then we were a store with a catalog. Now we're an international direct shipping business with 1 store and 1 catalog. All right, game time? All right.
Linda, before you sit down.
So I mentioned that we sell brand new but old fashioned products. Stores full of antiques. For my father's passion, we don't sell antiques. We sell brand new working replicas. So when you walk in the store, if it's out of reach, it's likely an antique. The potbelly stove, the goat covered treadmill, the double ringer washers, but we sell some things that you might think are antiques, and so you're gonna guess what they are. There's a couple rules here. Don't yell it out, because there's always somebody that knows that they all are. I think it's you. And then once you've won a prize, don't guess again. So give me a chance to walk around. This is the largest group that I normally do it, but this would sit on the ground. But they don't have a chance to see it. I saw the first hand over here.
That chicken feeder.
It is a chicken tower. Yep. Chickens are aggressive and they're not very bright. If there's a pecking order, the biggest chicken kills the smallest chicken just because he can. So if you let them think, they each have their own spot. Aggressive and not very bright. So you put a mason jar and you fill it with chicken feed or water, and then they don't fight. I have one, the mason jar, I fill it with M&Ms, and then it's portion control. Without getting your fingers stuck. All right, chicken feeder. And I will give you one of those dishcloths that I said are one of the best sellers in our store. Not a lot. Okay. This time I'm gonna start at the back of the room, give them a chance. Okay. It came up like this. There's a hole in the bottom, and it be about this height. Cast iron does go hard, then it goes back together. Yes, spring ball over, very good. So, back in the day, the shopkeeper, you would buy something and you would put it on the front and you'd have the round basket and wrapped up. And then pull the string down to tie it up. So it was important that you knew where your string was, you knew how much you had left, so that you could use it. So instead of using it, when she's sitting around, the string, and okay, she's talking about Christmas, she's been talking about shopping. So this is a string ball. We have one in our house in the garage. Again, you know what the string is, it's not tangled, and you know how much is left. So. We do sell a lot of old fashioned candy too. Okay. Next one. Before, there's no estimated memory, there's no complicated manual. The cast iron round circle that's got little notches. No, we did that. No. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's different. Yeah, it's a corn strip. So you put the corn, particularly for animal field, the corn's a little drier, you can pop it through there. And those little notches take all the kernels out of it. So it's a corn shell with a corn stripper. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's another thing, something that from I get most of it. And so I want to kind of look there like this. Face on it, people love last fellow. So there's never been Lehman, we have hundreds and hundreds, everything from kiwi juice to grape pecan, to sherbet triple, to ketchup flavor, pickle flavor, blue cheese flavor, because that's what people are asking for. Okay. Here's another one. A lot of people use these for decorative purposes. Yes, and true, that's what we call it, but it's a hot plate thing. And if you have a wood cook stove, those are very important. If you have one of these, I love this thing. For slicing egg, like in a salad or a hard-boiled egg. Yeah. I use mine all the time. Okay, we're getting short on time here, so I'm gonna do this last one. Now, I know it's a candle. Obviously, it's a candle. But it goes up and down for a very specific purpose. Yes,
Is that the, like dating candle?
it is. It is. We call it a courting game. So what would happen, right here, what would happen, and this is not an Amish, but it is a pioneer thing. is that a young man would come to call, dad would determine how long the day would last. When the candle burns down here, the candle is extinguished and the date is over. If dad comes in and likes what's going on, she gives him more time. If dad comes in and doesn't like what's going on, the candle and the date are extinguished. Give yourself a hand, very good.
Put it back, my grab the top, the single top, the top rows and a button. All right, thank you so much, guys. This is really fun.
Okay.
Our appreciation of speaking to us in your program today. You get us an addition of the rotary wheel with the four-way test on the back
Okay.
made by the Village Network.
Oh,
Students.
wonderful. Students, wonderful. I'm a
Yep.
big fan of the Village Network, so I appreciate that.
Good,
Thank you.
good. Okay, next week, Tom Hilt will be hosting the Boy Scouts of America Buckeyes Council. And Nathan Hopper and Amy Heller will be here to speak to us. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.